And what we're saying is the Conservatives are the largest party. Note, they don't have an overall majority at this stage.
This was not the result that Theresa May wanted. The exit poll predicted her Conservative Party would lose seats and not have a clear-cut majority. And as the night wore on, so it proved. For a Prime Minister who had hoped to deliver big gains, it was a humiliation, and it showed. But for now, she will try and stay on.
At this time, more than anything else, this country needs a period of stability. And if, as the indications have shown, if this is correct, that the Conservative Party has won the most seats and probably the most votes, then it will be incumbent on us to ensure that we have that period of stability, and that is exactly what we will do.
The promise of new political uncertainty had an immediate effect on the financial markets. The British pound plummeted in value against the dollar. The main opposition party under Jeremy Corbyn did well. It was a vindication for his promise of high tax and spend policies and his populist campaigning style.
People have said they've had quite enough of austerity politics. They've had quite enough of cuts in public expenditure, underfunding our health service, underfunding our schools and our education service, and not giving our young people the chance they deserve in our society.
His appeal to young first-time voters with a promise to get rid of student fees seems to have worked.
I don't know if it's going to change how much it's going to change, but as long as they don't have a majority vote, then it's looking quite good for Labour.
Big-hitting and normally talkative Conservatives look decidedly sheepish.
Early days, it's early days, and
Theresa May's future as the leader of the Conservatives could now be in real doubt. This election was meant to focus on Brexit, but the result could mean a hung parliament and days, if not weeks, of confusion. Brexit talks may have to wait. The UK faces big decisions, and this result means it may not have a strong government to make them.
Well, let's cross to our correspondent Matt Moore, who's in London now. Matt, a disastrous night for Theresa May and her Conservative Party.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, John. Every single newspaper contains, or almost every single newspaper contains the word gamble. May's big gamble doesn't pay off. It was complete failure for her. Her critics will have said, you know, she took the opportunity, she looked at the polls and she said to herself, let's strike now. Let's whip up the patriotism that comes with going into Brexit negotiations, and let's get the votes in while Labour is looking weak under Jeremy Corbyn. It's completely backfired. Jeremy Corbyn has done much better than anyone expected, and Theresa May now is looking at her political future and wondering just how much longer she can hang on and whether she can form a government. My colleague Simon McGregor-Wood has been observing events and reporting on events all night. Still looking very well for it, though, Simon. So let's just talk about Theresa May first of all. Yeah. Most people will say she's done enough to earn herself an exit out of Downing Street and to vacate the spot for somebody else.
Well, that's certainly what Jeremy Corbyn was saying earlier. He's saying it was time for a change. I think, no doubt, there will be senior colleagues in the Conservative Party who have been asking her some very tough questions this morning at Conservative Party headquarters. But the word is that the whisper on the Westminster sidewalk is that she's going to try and stick it out. She has every right to. She still is the Prime Minister. She is still the leader of the largest party in the House of Commons, although she does not have a clean majority. But we understand that she is going to come out later in this morning outside 10 Downing Street, and she's going to say that she is still the right person to provide the stability. There's that word again.
The whole
to
campaign,
take this country forward.
She's been saying stability, and she wants to have her hand strengthened in negotiations. Well, now she's got to wonder at what point her own party will turn on her, and we'll leave that for another moment, of course, but we're expecting her to talk in a couple of hours.
Yes, at about 10 o'clock London time. That's just in under 2 hours' time. She's expected to come out and tell the nation what she's going to do next. She could surprise us, but the word is that she's going to stick with the task in hand. She feels she has the right to try and form a government.
She will have to work with another party.
Well, the maths don't allow anything else, and the word that we're getting is that she's going to try and forge some kind of alliance most probably with a small party from Northern Ireland, the Democratic Unionist Party. Let's not get too far into the complication of Northern Irish politics, but they trend towards sympathising with the Conservatives on a lot of issues. They are natural partners, what price they might extract from her, but they would give her the numbers to take her past the magic 326 seats in Parliament to get business done. But is it a big, strong, muscular mandate to negotiate the Brexit and other controversial policies? Who knows?
Yes, and speaking of Brexit, the DUP's position on Brexit tends to favour remaining, so that's going to be a point of controversy.
Most people in Northern Ireland, if you go back to the referendum, wanted to stay, mainly because they wanted the benefits of the European Union, but also because the European Union was, in a sense, a guarantor of the delicate Northern Irish peace process. So expect Irish politics to come back into the centre of this debate if, indeed, she tries to do a deal with the Democratic Unionist Party of Northern Ireland.
And of course we have Brexit negotiations starting on June the 19th, Monday.
Maybe.
Yes, that's the point.
Maybe. The guy in charge of Brexit negotiations, the European Commission, Mr. Oettinger, is quoted already today on Friday morning saying that June the 19th deadline, where we're going to have our first proper meeting, I suspect that deadline might slide. So they are clearly delicately standing back and allowing the British to try and sort out their domestic political mess. But I don't think there's any chance of those talks starting on the 19th.
Sure. Then the speculation turns to, could there be another election?
That has been speculated upon, but the sense that we're getting from the electorate is that they actually rather resented being presented with this election. They had an election in 2015. They had the referendum last year. Theresa May didn't really need to call this election. It was a political gamble for selfish reasons, and I think people rather resented it. The idea, the very notion that she might turn around in a few weeks' time and say, let's go back to the polls to try and get a clear-cut decision, I think would be political suicide.
Let me ask you, Simon, what do you think went wrong for Theresa May? 6 weeks ago, she looked to have a commanding lead, and yet over that period of time, it was whittled away, whittled away. What happened?
She wasn't a very good campaigner. The manifesto was unpopular, even among some of her own politicians. It was all bad news. There weren't any treats for the electorate to get excited about. On the other hand, Jeremy Corbyn confounded the critics and became a really good campaigner.
Yes.
His policy proposals were really popular. They involved spending lots of money on things like the health service and schools and wages for public sector workers. What's not to like?
Yes.
And this is after a period of austerity when people's living standards have been squeezed. He was offering them the sweetie shop, if you like, and hers was relentlessly bad news. I think also the biggest thing, she just didn't connect with the public. She's not a very good people person, and I don't think we knew that until she started the campaign.
What's interesting is people would observe her campaigning, and she would go to a very small venue, which was mostly empty, bring out a few workers in a sort of staged environment, whereas Jeremy Corbyn would go to these big rallies and really whip up the crowd.
Yes, lots of young people, rock star atmosphere, lots of music, lots of glad handing. It looked natural. Of course, it was very well managed and choreographed, but he looked like he knew what he was doing. And she looked awkward all the time. And the other big thing is, you remember that she refused to do direct television debates with him. That was unpopular. And I think as the campaign wore on, people say, well, what's wrong with her? Why isn't she exposing herself to the debate? What's she got to be scared about?
And the problem is she and her campaign team built the campaign around her, and they also built it around this idea of stability going into the Brexit negotiations. They seem to have underestimated the dislike for her personally from some sections of society, and also that people were interested in issues other than Brexit.
Yes, they were. I think you're right to say that initially she thought it would be a good idea, and her team thought it would be a good idea, to pitch the campaign as me against him, Theresa May against Jeremy Corbyn. You're going to trust me. I used to be the Home Secretary for 5 years. I've got a reputation for being hard-working and competent. And look at this guy. You can't vote for him. Wow, that didn't work out very well. And the other thing, I think, was that people didn't like the way the campaign was constructed. They didn't like her style, and they didn't like the way that she relies very, very heavily on 2 or 3 close advisors that she brought from the Home Office when she was Home Secretary. And I think internally it proved very unpopular. Senior Conservatives simply didn't like the way the campaign was going. So, early on, I think the party itself was at loggerheads with itself.
Let's just go north of the border for a moment to Scotland. And the SNP, which favours staying inside the European Union and which favours having another referendum on independence from the United Kingdom, actually lost quite a few seats.
Yes, a lot of seats. They went from about 54 in Parliament there down to about 24. It's a very bad day for them. And they lost senior members of the party. And quite bizarrely, the party that did really well in Scotland from a very low base was the Conservatives. So go and figure that out. I mean, it's a very confusing situation in Scotland. The Labour Party gained a few seats, but the Tories, the Conservatives, under a very good leadership in Scotland, did extremely well. Bad news for Nicola Sturgeon, the head of the Scottish Nationalists. I suspect that the whole issue of Scottish independence, another referendum on that, is off the table. But a very complicated, confusing map in Scotland.
Well, Simon, we can now look forward to the Prime Minister addressing the nation in just under 2 hours' time. For now, though, back to John Brain in the studio.
Matt, thank you very much indeed. And we'll have much more from Matt at the top of the next hour. Well, let's cross to Brussels now and our correspondent Sarah Lenny and pick up on one of the topics that Matt and Simon were talking about there. That's the Brexit negotiations. And just before we do that, we can show some live pictures of Jeremy Corbyn leaving his home, I think. No, we can't. I'm sorry. OK, let's go back to Sarah Lenny. Sarah, the other leaders in the EU must be loving this, because it means that they're in a much stronger position with the UK now to negotiate Brexit. Britain clearly weaker with a very messy situation in its parliament.
Well, absolutely. I'd say there are a few people in a couple of European capitals who are a little bit gleeful at these results in the United Kingdom, particularly seeing Theresa May as having received her comeuppance, if you will, for the hard position she's taken on Brexit and also the idea, basically, of leaving the European Union in the first place, particularly in Berlin, in Germany. We know that some of those talks in London, Brexit talks between the Europeans and the British, were very testy, with allegations from both sides of leaks, and people from the European side, in fact, saying that Theresa May was deluded in what she'd basically asked from the European Union. There are, of course, though, others who were hoping and expecting for clarity, more than anything, clarity this morning as to who they would be negotiating with. And unfortunately for them, there's absolutely none of that.
And of course, these negotiations are due, or were due, to start within a couple of weeks. Is that timetable now out of the window?
It seems that way. Now, some of the European delegates said, well, those talks were scheduled to begin on June 19, but that was not confirmed. We've also heard, though, from Gunther Oetting, he's the German member of the European Commission, saying he doubts that those talks will start on time, and this really just adds more uncertainty to the talks without a strong negotiating partner in the United Kingdom. The former Finnish Premier, Alexander Stubb, has also commented, he's tweeted, it looks like we might need to take a timeout on Brexit negotiations. And obviously this is something that both sides had alluded to, in that this could not be rushed. Angela Merkel had basically said it's better if these negotiations took time so that they got things right. What's at stake are a massive legal and financial ramifications. This is really uncharted territory for not just the United Kingdom, but for the European Union, in having one of its member states, the second most important member, wanting to leave.